When it comes to finishing the interior walls of your house, because the tumbleweeds are framed like a conventional house, there are many options. Just about any finish you have in a conventional home, you can have in your tiny house. Now, some of the things you want to consider on choosing that material is in a smaller space, lighter materials make it seem a little more airy. Also, it is subject to the torsions and vibrations of traveling on the road, so things like sheetrock might not be ideal as they don't flex very well. But you could use a plywood paneling, tongue and groove boards like we've chosen here. There's just many options. Alan's going to demonstrate. We've chosen tongue and groove pine for this interior. Just a little tips about how to put this up.
Okay, what we have here is a 1/4 inch tongue and groove. It's a lot lighter than the 3/4 inch, and it actually installs very nicely. We like it better than the 3/4 inch for walls. It's easier to bend and all that. So what we do is we start on the very bottom and we keep the tongue up. That way when you go like this and you push it in, you don't have to worry about breaking the tongue of it. And we use glue as well. We only do about 16-inch section at a time because the glue dries faster than when you're installing. Start on one end, nail. And the way we nail is on each end, we do 2 nails. We face nail everything. And here in the middle, we only do 1 nail on the top, because here where the tongue and groove is, it holds it, and you don't have to worry about nailing that because you have a nail here, and then that holds it for the next piece. And they're approximately a little over 1 inch long. We don't want to go too long for whenever we come across wiring. We don't want to hit the wiring going in. Now in the corners, you see we are a little bit short, and the reason for that is that way we don't have to be exact. What we're going to do then is we're going to fill that in with a trim piece once we're completed on both sides of the wall.
It looks great, Alan, and the light color really makes the room feel a little bigger.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about is cutting this little notch with our window trim. Our window trim is coming in past the face of the paneling about 1/4 inch, so we need to cut a little notch in the back here. So if you'll notice, I have my blade down to where it just comes in. It's coming in about 3/8 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece and show you what it looks like with the notch into the piece. As you can see, we have this nice clean notch cut out here, and now what that'll do, it'll sit right onto the window trim, and it'll come together right like that. I'll lay nice and flat onto the wall. Now the other thing is we have the piece of head trim and the sill trim, and you won't want to go all the way out. So if you notice, I made these little marks so I know where my blade stops and where my blade ends. So instead of coming in from the end, I'll come down from the top, and this is the mark showing where my blade is. So I'll go past the mark about 3/4 inch before I go down. We'll go ahead and cut this piece as well. Now as you can see, we stayed in from the end a little bit, so now all we need to do is take a handsaw and just cut here, and then that the same way. It'll rest right on top of the head and the sill jamb of the window.
I'm standing here next to Pop. He's the Fisher's father, and he's been very carefully sanding the edges of all of the window trim. And one of the reasons for that is it just gives it a nice professional finish. And it looks really nice when it's done, and also you'll get rid of any rough edges that your saw might cause as you're cutting these.
I'm going to demonstrate why this cut is done the way it is and the reason for it. This window is made for a 3.5 inch wall, and it's usually figured for like 1/2 inch sheetrock, which most times that's what it is. But in this case we did 1/4 inch. So we cut the 1/4 inch off to make up for this 1/4 inch that we have on here instead of the sheetrock. Now when you put this on, it sits real nice in there. Now your reveal is going to be a little different than out here, but that's okay. Now if you wouldn't make that cut, you would have this big gap on this side here. and that would look bad. As you can see on the top and the bottom piece, we didn't come out all the way. The reason for that is we're doing the same thing we did on the siding outside. We're hanging out over a little bit on each side. Now if you'd go all the way out, you would see it right here in this corner. So instead of going all the way out, we stayed back approximately 1/2 inch. Now when you look down here, you don't see that cut that we made.
Meg, there's a lot of different options for what you're going to put down on the floor of your tiny home, and we have a few of them up here.
Yeah, there's a couple of things to consider when you're talking about the design of your floor. This happens to be one of my favorite things because we walk on it every day. Often we're looking where we're going, so we're looking at it a lot. It's just, I love flooring.
Well, and they all have a different feel too.
Yeah, so tile, for example, is often found in kitchens or bathrooms or wet areas. And depending on how you install it, you can actually make it waterproof. One thing to caution about in your tiny home is that tile, when you're choosing it out, you might want to pick smaller sizes. So for example, we've got these little 1x1 tiles here, or even up to 4x4. But you'll want to resist picking out those big giant tiles because of cracking and shifting as your house as you might move it from place to place.
With those large tiles, I'd imagine you'd be making a lot of cuts to fit it around the obstacles in a tiny home as well.
Right. Now, another waterproof material is going to be your vinyl flooring options. So this happens to be a scrap that we found.
It has the look of tile, but it doesn't have the same feel.
No, and it's actually a rubberized or plastic type product. So it's going to be flexible. It's going to move with the house as you're traveling, but it's going to give you whatever look you choose. Sometimes they look like hardwood, sometimes they look like tile. Sometimes they can have a completely unique design.
I've always found the tile to be a bit cold and slippery feeling underfoot.
So that's where you're going to want to look at maybe some of your hardwoods. For example, this is a bamboo product. It's a solid hardwood. Bamboo is fast growing, so that means it's renewable. And this product, it kind of latches together. It's a tongue and groove product, just like some of the other things that we've been installing on the tiny home. And it gives a very nice finish. It's also a little warmer underfoot. than tile.
And this comes pre-finished.
It does, this particular brand. It can also come unfinished, and that's where you're going to want to investigate what type of finish. And it comes in a variety of colors. So you can see that we have a couple of different colors here, but there are many out there to choose from. All depends on what look you want.
Now, you mentioned the snap lock. That's a nice feature with some of the engineered products where it doesn't require any type of fastening system or glue. They actually latch together like a Lincoln set and lay on the ground.
Right, I have some here. And you can see that just the way it's manufactured, it locks together and then it's held down by perhaps some glue, or you might not even need anything more than just the locking.
Yes. Now this engineered product is mostly compressed board underneath with a very thin layer of veneer.
Yeah, and the veneer comes in a lot of different stuff. They can actually mimic what, this one happens to be a heritage style, so it looks like wide sawn oak planks, and it's beautiful.
And again, this is an engineered wood product. It comes with its own vapor barrier and pad underneath.
Yeah, so it actually helps protect from water a little bit, and it's a floating floor system, which means that you don't necessarily have to physically attach it to the floor, but it attaches to itself, and then it can move kind of with the house.
And I've done both types, Meg, the glue down, nail down, and the engineered. One of the benefits of the engineered snap lock is if you have to replace one of these boards because of a burn mark or a chip, it's more easily done than the glue or nail down.
Now, carpet is another way that you can go, and we're all used to seeing kind of what's called the broad loom carpet, and this is a little sample here. This happens to be a Berber carpet, which means that the loop starts in the bottom and then comes up, loops around, and goes back down. It's very common in basements and that kind of thing. And then there's also a tip shear broadloom carpet. And what broadloom means is basically they make it on a big giant loom, and it might be about 12 feet wide, which is more than wide enough for your tiny house. There's also kind of some new stuff on the market, which is flooring tiles.
I like the looks of those.
Yeah, there's lots of different colors, different feels. I think this one kind of actually looks a little bit like grass. You want to bring the nature inside?
This would be great for watching a football game.
Now, the flooring tiles are actually modular, and they've been around in commercial construction for a very long time, but there's only a few brands that are making the transition to residential carpets. And you might notice that these are very small sizes. These are just samples. When you order a whole carton of floor tiles for your house, they're actually quite a bit larger. They're about 2 feet by 2 feet, and you lay them down with actually glue dots, and it's a very easy installation. There's these round pucks of glue, and you bring 4 tiles together in a corner, and that's how it's held together. It also is a floating floor installation, meaning you don't physically attach it to the subfloor underneath.
It sounds easy to do.
It is easy to do, and it's also easy to change. If you have a puppy that makes a mess or you spill wine, you can easily change just one tile.
And to cut them, can you use shears or a razor knife?
Yeah, and you're going to want to try to keep those cuts up against the wall where your trim is going to hide that.
Good point. Now, we don't have any natural wood without a finish here, but that's also a possibility, getting antiqued wood or reclaimed wood for your floors?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of salvage materials out there. The history of this country is that we have a lot of buildings that are old, and when they're torn down, you might want to talk to the contractor who's tearing a house down and say, hey, can I have some of that Heartland old good wood?
I like the character of that old wood with the nail holes and the stain marks. It just adds a lot to the look.
And if you sand it, then you won't get splinters either.
Good point.
Throughout the course of your build, you'll run across many situations where you're going to need to apply a finish or a protective coat onto whatever material you're working with.
Yes, just about all of our materials will benefit from some type of protection, coating, oil, or something.
Right. And it could be even the flooring, the trailer, or even the shelving, or even your countertops that you might be providing protection for.
There's just a dizzying array of all of these products, Meg, and I just get glazed over when I walk into the hardware store or the paint store and try to pick one.
So we're going to cover just a few that you might consider when you're looking to finish out your house. I'm going to start over here with flooring. So we have a couple of high traffic finishes, and in both cases I've picked out a satin finish. Now this is going to be the sheen, which is the reflectivity of the finish that you're putting on the product. A satin's going to be a middle. It's not going to be very glossy, but it's not going to be flat either. So a satin is kind of the middle of the road. You might look to a gloss or a high gloss if you want that really reflective finish on your floor, maybe like a bowling alley. That's a very reflective finish.
Yes, and whatever finish you choose, it needs to perform a few things. One is protect from moisture. That is, if you spill something on your floor, you want it to prevent that liquid from soaking into the wood.
The other thing that you want it to do is to enhance the natural beauty of the wood that you might be putting down. So if you've installed a hardwood floor, you can enjoy that grain and that texture of the wood for many years to come.
And some finishes will actually harden the surface to make it more resistant to scratches.
Right. These two here are both the same product from the same company, but they're actually, one is an oil base and the other one is a latex or water-based paint. Now, the gentleman that I spoke to when purchasing these gave me some helpful information. He said the oil base is going to provide a little bit more durable finish, but it requires more cleanup and more specialized tools when you're laying it down. The latex is going to be an easier cleanup. You can simply wash your hands if you get it on there, or you might be able to use water to clean it up as well. But you're going to compromise a little bit in the longevity and durability of the finish that you lay down. So it's a personal choice to you, which you want to use.
And we have some other options here for floors, don't we? These are some type of sealer with an acrylic base or something that forms a shield. We also have oils that soak into the wood and dry in the wood.
Right. Now, with any of these products, you can actually change the color of the wood that you've laid down. So I've picked out here a couple of stains. This one happens to be a dark walnut color, and then this one is actually a red oak. So it's going to kind of bring out that red color. Now, the interesting thing about stains is that there's two different ways of manufacturing them. Some stains use a pigment base and the other ones use a dye base. You're going to want to try to gravitate towards the stains that have a pigment in them. And these are very good terms to know and take to your painting professional. And you can ask them for their advice at the store about which stain that they might recommend.
And we have other options for the top of the floor, if we're talking about floors here. You can also wax the surface of any floor, any sealant that you put down to give it a hand-rubbed kind of glossier look and a little more protectant.
Right, so this one over here is a special one. This is called Butcher Block Finish, and this is actually a food-safe application. So you're going to want to use this one when you have, say, a wooden butcher block countertop in your kitchen. And it's a good thing to protect the wood from damage. It's also going to help with water, because in a kitchen you're going to be using water a lot. It might splash out of the sink or you might spill a little bit. But you need to be cautious about what you apply on that surface, because it is eventually going to make its way onto your dinner table.
Right, and I'm sure some of the warning labels on these would prevent that, would advise against that.
Right.
We also have finishes for metal. Every surface, our wood, our metal, even our roof at times, can benefit from another finish. This is a metal primer that you might use on any metal surface, particularly your trailer. If it has an open area that's exposed, paint is chipped, and then you can top coat it with a specialty metal paint.
The tools that you're going to use to apply these different finishes is going to vary. For example, this one here is just a foam sponge on a handle, and you might use this one for stain. You would just dip it into the stain, apply it quickly to the wood that you're working on, and then you're going to want to take some towels and quickly wipe that off. You can apply many different coats to change the color. Even with a dark stain, you can always make it darker by applying a second coat.
Good point.
Same thing with the brushes. Now, I have always learned that using a higher quality brush is better when you're using a brush.
That's been my experience too. The few agonizing times that I've had to paint, it does go much better with a good brush.
Some of the cheap brushes aren't necessarily fastened very well, and so what happens is that these bristles actually will come out into your finish, and then you're having to go along and pick out the bristles from your finish. It's not a very pleasant task.
And it's easier to get a smooth finish with no brush marks with a better quality brush.
Better quality brush.
But that means you're going to be cleaning.
Yes.
This is not a throwaway.
No. So my parents actually have brushes that are about 15 years old. They've been using them over and over again. Now for the floors, it's a little bit different application because you're usually going to be applying the finish after the floor is down. So this, for example, is a sheepskin kind of brush head, and then it has a little slot here where you can attach any broom handle, and then you're going to be laying it down on the floor from a standing position.
I like that method.
It's easy on your back.
Yes.
Now for cleanup, you're also going to need to have a couple of specialty tools on hand. For example, oil-based finishes are very hard to clean up, and so you might want to use gloves when you clean up after applying an oil-based finish. Especially use paint thinner. Paint thinner is actually going to dissolve the material, but it can also dissolve your skin if you're not careful. You can actually get quite horrible chemical burns from paint thinner.
Yep, and the gloves will prevent you from going around with that henna look in your hands. To make your tumbleweed a home, you'll need some conveniences.
They can add beauty as well as comfort to your tiny home. So Tumbleweed recommends using this heater, which is a Dickinson Marine product. It's actually meant to be a fireplace for a boat, but it looks beautiful, and installed, it will provide enough heat to heat your small space.
A cooktop, this one model is a propane, will allow you to cook, boil water, whatever your dining needs require.
I also think this one looks really nice.
The stainless steel is a clean look. And then a refrigerator, something to keep your food storage. This one has a freezer on top and a refrigerator on the bottom. These appliances come standard with Tumbleweed, but there are other options.
There are many options, in fact. You might want to look for the RV industry or to the boating industry when you're researching appliances for your home. They offer more compact options that still perform the same way.
And they're usually more efficient since they deal with a limited power supply. And if you're going with solar, that's important.
You'll notice that we already have one of our kitchen base cabinets in the kitchen area, although we don't have the rest of them. The reason for this is that this cabinet is actually too wide to go through the front door of the Cypress model. The same is true on the Fensel models. So before these windows were installed, we made sure to get any large objects that wouldn't fit through the door in before these windows were installed.
Now that our stove is installed, we need to run the gas lines to it. How we're going to do that is we're going to hard pipe from here through, down through the cabinets, and then over to the place that we stubbed up from before. So this is where we brought our gas up from underneath. And you can see here I teed because one of these is going to go to our hot water heater, and the other one right here is going to come across through the cabinets and then up to the stove.